Penguin. Perfect, show. Where is he?
He's right here.
Dude, I like horses.
Welcome back, All Elite family, for episode 20 of the All Elite podcast. This is a big podcast. The road to Fyter Fest is officially here, the big preview show. I'm your host, Andrew Kazir, and as always, I'm joined by my boy, Bitter Mark, AEW fan, Fyter Fest friend, and pro wrestling enthusiast, All Elite AJ. How's it going, AJ?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited. As of recording this, I think we're basically 24 hours away from the day of Fyter Fest, and like you know, I'll be going. Aside from that, I got a film coming out in about a couple weeks and working on one currently. How's it going with you?
I'm doing awesome, man. I finally got myself some tickets to All Out today. I decided I was going to pay the extra price and get the secondary market price. Tried to get them regularly, but what can you do? And in the end of the day, I think I got some pretty sweet seats, so we'll have to see what happens. And they weren't that much of a markup considering the seats I got, so I'm not too disappointed about it. Actually really excited. Haven't really had time to fully think about the fact that I'm going to be at this awesome show, and just the whole weekend in general. I'm hoping to be able to attend some of the StarCast events and stuff like that. So that's just a really awesome thing I've got going on. So finally I have something exciting to talk about on the introduction of this show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy you were able to get them at all. I know it was steep, but from what you were showing me the pictures, I think you're going to have a good seat.
And this week we have a lot to talk about, especially with Fyter Fest just 2 days away. There's obviously so much to talk about with that. We're also going to discuss WWE using Evolve to compete with Fight for the Fallen next month. There's also news regarding AEW registering a new trademark, possibly for their new TV show. And there was also a change to a major Fyter Fest matchup. So we do have a lot to talk about discussing Fyter Fest. We're going to do our Being the Elite and Road To Recap as well. And we're going to end the show with some Fyter Fest predictions, as always. But first, let's just talk about WWE utilizing the Evolve 10th Anniversary show to go head-to-head with Fight for the Fallen on the WWE Network on Saturday, July 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. AJ, what do you think about WWE essentially using an independent as direct competition for one of AEW's first shows and a charity show?
I think it's abhorrent, not mostly because of the latter of what you just said. If this was Fyter Fest or All Out, of course, I understand that's business. It's a wrestling competition and there's going to be competition. But a charity show that's affecting shooting victims, especially in Florida, where there's been a lot of that. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I've graded essays talking about how people were reacting while they were getting text messages from their friends in a school shooting. And that's obviously at Parkland, but that's still terrifying. And I just can't believe that the WWE would stoop that low. To one, it's going to throw Evolve under the bus. Two, the ratings on the network aren't going to be as good for Evolve. And it's not Evolve's fault. It's not the company's fault. It's not anybody working on the show's fault. But nonetheless, I feel like, I don't know. It just seems really disgusting to me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I do think that it's really low just to go at them and compete with an obvious charity event. I mean, maybe WWE and the people who made this decision didn't know directly that this was going to be a charity event. So there is that to take into consideration. Something someone on Twitter had also mentioned to me was that it's not really going to affect the overhead cost of a fan who's going to go to this show is going to go regardless. They're not going to sit home and watch Evolve from home rather than go to an AEW show live. And the ticket sales are what are contributing to the charity. So in that instance, they're not directly harming the charity. It's just the look of it all to me that disappoints me, and I don't know if I'm so on the edge of saying I'm disgusted and all this, but I do think that it's a little bit shameful for a company this is how you're going to try and compete, and it's not going to work, and I think that's maybe why I'm not so affected by it.
And not just that, like what you said, it's not going to affect ticket sales, it's not going to affect Fight for the Fallen. What it will affect is another promotion, and a lot of independent wrestlers who are probably going to catch some flack that they don't deserve, and it's throwing Evolve under the bus. And I think you mentioned that Evolve is going to have very low ratings, and they're probably going to get blamed for having really low ratings on the network, and it's just, I don't know. There's a whole lot to unpack here, and I think you were discussing a column, and I think that would be good maybe to get a full briefing or thoughts on this, but overall it's very, very disgusting to me personally.
It just sucks all around, I think. I think that independence on the network could have been a thing years ago and been something awesome, and now they're just trying to do it to pull something out of their ass, and it's not working.
No.
And it's not gonna work. I don't think there's any way they're going to be able to compete with the matches they have announced. And then AEW went ahead and announced that Jericho was going to be a part of Fight for the Fallen almost hours later. So it wasn't a direct result, I don't think, but I think Jericho was like, yeah, I'll do this show now that they want to try and pull some shit like this. So,
and good for him.
Exactly, good for him. And that's some from what I remember, he had said on his podcast he wasn't working Fight for the Fallen.
Yeah, he did.
So if he decided that he's going to work the show in direct result of this, awesome for him to be sticking with his company through that.
Absolutely.
And then in other AEW news, AEW applied for a trademark Wednesday Night Dynamite a couple weeks back. This has people speculating that it's going to lead towards their weekly TNT show being on Wednesdays. That show is going to premiere in the fall later this year, so that's just something to take into consideration. They had previously trademarked Tuesday Night Dynamite, but now it looks like they're obviously aiming for that Wednesday night time slot that everyone was anticipating.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And that we were theorizing about it, and it was being, rumored about. But, with TNT and the NBA, there's a lot to consider with that. And I think Wednesday is going to be a good time for them.
But what I think is interesting about it, and I think it's the best move, is they had a lot of analytics saying with SmackDown moving off of Tuesdays, there will be fans looking for wrestling on Tuesdays. But I think that would have been a lack of foresight. The WWE audience already isn't necessarily an audience that they're getting. They've proven that through their pay-per-view buys. It's not a WWE audience that's buying their pay-per-views. It's a different kind of audience. And while they will attract some of that audience when it's on free TV, you want to attract a new audience. And if we're going on Wednesdays, when basketball season does start up, we consistently have a lead-in on Tuesdays to advertise us to a fan base that could be interested in our product.
Yeah.
We already saw the result of TNT advertising just Double or Nothing. Now we'll have that advertising every week the night before saying, hey, you're watching this basketball game? Check out this AEW show tomorrow. And when playoffs and stuff start rolling, and that's when WWE loses some of their biggest ratings, they're going to be advertising on Monday nights. Hey, check out this AEW show on Wednesday nights. And it's going to pay off big for them, and it's smarter that way rather than saying, oh, Tuesdays people are going to be looking for wrestling because SmackDown won't be on. But then come December, they have to be on BR Live every Tuesday because of basketball. So it was that's the smart move in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And overall, I think what you're saying is right, because they were doing that for Double or Nothing. They were saying, oh, and check out Double or Nothing. It's going to be premiering on blah, 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 blah. And I think that alone got people who had no idea that the show was even going on going, oh, wait, really?
Exactly. So I think it was a great move, and it just makes all the sense in the world to me. Rather than preempting your show for basketball, you can use basketball as a free advertising slot, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
In the last bit of big news we had this week from AEW, just earlier today, AEW announced a major match on Fyter Fest has been changed.
Yes.
Jon Moxley versus Joey Janela is now going to be an unsanctioned match. AEW has been consistently pushing the idea of having straight matches and clean matches with clean finishes. So if they're going to have a hardcore or somewhat of a death match, they're wanting to make it an unsanctioned match, which makes all the sense in the world. They had mentioned that Mox and Janela both had intentions to go beyond the rules anyway, so they made it make sense within their product as well, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. We were talking about how we were hoping that this would get a gimmick on it. Whatever that gimmick would be, we didn't care, but I think every fan who knows anything about Joey Janela wants to see Joey Janela and Jon Moxley hit each other with steel chairs and, beat the hell out of each other. So I think this is just a great move all around.
And I was skeptical. I know I had mentioned last week that if they were going to add a stipulation to a match, it would probably be this one, but I was still pretty skeptical that they would do anything early on. And I like the idea of the unsanctioned because you're not saying hardcore. It's not really like a gimmicky match. It works really well and fits within the style of what they're trying to do in AEW. So that's great. And I just liked that it was what we had sort of predicted, that this is the match that everyone would want to see be a hardcore match. And whatever these guys bring to the table could literally be anything. I can envision anything from barbed wire to thumbtacks to glass to fired at anything with these two. So who knows if they'll go all out? Who knows if AEW will allow them to do this much? It's interesting, though, because they already have a hardcore match on the card in the pre-show. So.
Yeah. I mean, I got to imagine that they're going to let them go all out, because you put Joey Janela and Jon Moxley in a main event match, and and it's not a big show, but it's a show, and it's an AEW show. I think you got to just assume that that's what people are going to want. They're going to want them to kill each other. I'm excited to see this match because I want to see a death match, honestly. I'm not expecting that caliber of like CZW death match that Jon Moxley and Janela have done, but I'm expecting a lot of blood. Let's just say that.
Absolutely. And just the last thing I have to say about this match before we predict it later on is that Janela's going to be a star by the end of the match. Yeah. He's already a star, but I think with this free audience and this type of match and this opponent in Jon Moxley being Moxley's first match, Janela's going to be a star by the end of this show.
Agreed.
And that wraps things up for our AEW news this week. Now we'll jump right into our Being the Elite recap. This week's episode of Being the Elite, number 158, was titled Control Room. This episode opens with Christopher Daniels, and he's talking to Britt Baker. He asks her if she wants to do one of the SCU bits because he needs someone to help him out. She says no, that she's still pretty upset at him for everything that happened in the past when him and Kaz cost Adam Cole the championship. She says, wow, are you really still upset about that? She says, no, I'm just messing with you, but I have a surprise for you. Tells him to open his hands. He opens his hands, closes his eyes, and he opens them up to find that Joey Ryan's dick is in his hands. Joey Ryan does the dick flip, and Christopher Daniels sells it like a champ. From there, we get the regular opening for Being the Elite, and we transition to Kenny Omega, and he's in the Fyter Fest control room. They're basically just doing the end of the Fyre Fest gimmick where everything is falling apart. Kenny can't get Salmon, he can't get Robert Downey Jr. to show up, he can't get anything he needed, so things are just falling apart for Kenny. Yeah, they got bread. After that, we get MJF, and he's talking to his butler, Walter. He tells Walter that he needed an Adam Page carbon copy. Walter attempts to get him this, but MJF just really isn't happy with this. He says that this carbon copy of Adam Page could literally be from New York. It's not nearly hillbilly hick enough for him. Despite the fact that he hates this guy, he still trains with him, but he tells Walter that Adam Page has a bum knee, so Walter immediately hits the guy with a chair, and MJF locks him up in a sharpshooter.
He's the real hitman.
I didn't even notice that was what they were doing.
Yeah, because of the Bret Hart thing.
Yep. After that, we see Matt Jackson hanging out in the pool. He's talking about how he and Nick Jackson will be at the Florida SuperCon in Miami on July 6th and the 7th. Yep. This is just some more ways for them to show off their water camera, I'm pretty sure. After that, we see Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy both sitting in a car with Jungle Boy literally on top of Luchasaurus' shoulders. Rich Knox comes up to them and he tells them both to get out of the car. Neither one complies, so he starts counting like a referee. 1, 2, 3. Finally, both guys get out of the car, and they listen to him talk about how they're not supposed to do that. He says that it's especially illegal to drive that way. Luchasaurus responds saying, with all due respect, I have a master's degree. And then they both get back in the car. From there, we get our weekly librarian segment where Peter Avalon is talking to Brandon Cutler. Cutler asks Avalon if he's talked to Leva Bates yet. Avalon says no because she makes him nervous. Cutler says that the executive vice presidents really still like the librarian gimmick and they're excited about it. And Avalon says maybe he and Leva Bates could become a tag team and be called the Librarians. After this, we see Christopher Daniels still selling over Joey Ryan's flip, which is just too long for me. We then transition to the Young Bucks, and they're hanging out in Mexico before their match, and they're checking out some merch. They say they could find some Young Bucks merch, but if they found it, it would probably be bootleg, so that wouldn't be too good. And then we get a nice promo video for Fyter Fest, just hyping all of the main matches. After that, the Young Bucks are stuck at the airport, and Matt Jackson is constantly watching their loss to the Lucha Brothers. They can't figure out what went wrong, and Nick Jackson says that it was just a loss, and they'll get over it. He mentions that a lot of it had to do with the Lucha Brothers just having the crowd on their side. After that, we get our weekly segment of the Being the Elite mailbag. Kenny Omega is asked if one of the Joshi women was the 9-year-old girl that he wrestled in DDT. Omega says no, that she was 7 and actually a member of the Stardom roster. Omega says that he did team with Rio in 2008 when she was only 11, and they worked together until 2015. He says that despite the fact they won't have the 7-year-old from the Stardom roster, you might be surprised at who joins the AEW roster in the future. After that, we get MJF, and he ignores a bunch of negative questions that were asked of him and then says a fake question, which is, why is everyone so jealous of your star power? You are highly underrated, and it's a shame you're not automatically AEW champion.
That was actually my question.
Oh, okay. MJF says that the person is completely right. After this, we get a nice little mocking segment where Matt and Nick Jackson are mocking the end of the Cody and Dustin match. They laugh about this, and Matt Jackson says, and they said we're corny, Lord have mercy. We then cut back to the control room where Robert Downey Jr. has just shut down Kenny Omega. He starts talking about people from Full House who could possibly show up at Fyter Fest. They keep shooting down all of his ideas. He mentions that we need a musical act. Ariana Grande isn't going to show up. The staff starts getting frustrated with him. He's frustrated with the staff and tells them to roll out. So they literally roll out, and he's just upset. We then get a fake ending, and Alex Trebali interrupts. He says that Kenny Omega is leaving him to finish all of the stuff for Fyter Fest, and this is messed up, so he's going to go find him. He finds Kenny Omega dancing on Dance Dance Revolution in what is literally the most confusing ending to anything. I did not understand it whatsoever.
Yeah, me
What
neither.
did you think of this week's episode of Being the Elite, AJ?
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't remember for sure, but I feel like a lot of these go-home episodes are always not the best, because they have a bunch of plans that they don't want to reveal, and so they're kind of just working with whatever they had the last week, and I feel like we're getting that vibe, which is fine, I understand. But then why make it so long? But anyways, there were good parts.
We just expect too much.
Yeah, I guess I do. But, I don't know. There was a lot of good parts. I liked the Daniels and Baker segment at first, but then it kept going, and I liked it less. Aside from that, the Omega stuff in the control room was all really funny. The ending I didn't get either, but, whatever. Kenny's good at DDR. Good to know. The Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, they are consistently being the most fun thing on Being the Elite. It's so good, and I hope they don't stop. I don't know. The promo was cool. I did like the promo a lot. The mailbag was really cool. I did not know that Rio was the kid that Kenny was tagging with, because I have seen some of those matches and I had no idea that was her, and that's pretty cool. The MJF question was funny. Everything MJF does is great. I love that he said he was filming vertical because fuck you. Like, he noted it out perfectly. Aside from that, Matt and Nick mocking Cody, I like how they're building that up. I know it's small, but I like how they're treating it like, oh, who cares? We're brothers. We've been doing this way longer than you. Like, almost brushing them off. I kind of like where this is going, and I'm getting more interested. Aside from that, it was fine. It is what it is. It's a go-home show, and I didn't hate it. I had fun watching it.
Yeah, it really wasn't bad. We just have a different thing that we want from these shows.
Yeah.
We want it to sort of be like a bunch of hype videos almost, where they're just sort of hyping up the main matches on the card, and they didn't really have the ability to do that on this show. So I do love the Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus thing. I think that's great. I thought that the control room segments were great as well, just like you did. And I think Omega continues to show that he just has an ability to be fun and be funny, but also be taken seriously in the ring, and just be a character that you might not be able to totally relate to, but you think he's fun. He's someone that you would want to be around or hang out with, and that's one of the best parts about Kenny Omega that really sticks out to me as someone that can continue to be a star despite doing nothing but comedy segments almost every time he's on Being the Elite.
I 100% agree with that. He's a likable guy. I think that's the bottom line, is just he himself is likable, and like you said, it feels like a guy who, if you went to have a drink with, like, you wouldn't be scared or intimidated. You would be like, oh, I'm hanging out with Kenny Omega, because he doesn't seem, I don't know, like, he is a superstar, but he does not portray himself that way, and there's something very humble about him that I like a lot.
Absolutely. I think humble is the perfect word when it comes to just describing Kenny Omega's attitude, especially with building up AEW and continuing to try and help make people into bigger stars, especially just with the matches he has coming up, his 6-man match, and then a match with CIMA at Fight for the Fallen. That's going to be interesting as well, as he just continues to try and bring stars that aren't known in this country and help make them stars here with his star power. And then speaking of Fight for the Fallen, we got our first episode of Road to Fight for the Fallen, so I guess this isn't really go home show of Road 2. It's more or less the starting of a show of Road 2, which I guess we can't complain so much then, because if last week's Road 2 was the go home, they did a really good job at promoting Private Party and other things within that episode, so I can't complain. This episode of Road to Fight for the Fallen opens with Nick Sobek. He's the vice president of business operations for AEW. He's known Tony Khan for a while, and over the last 3 years, Tony Khan has been planning this venture. He's debated, is it going to be worth it? But after the success of Double or Nothing, everything indicates yes, that this was a venture worth getting into. He also mentions that there was a shooting that had occurred in Jacksonville in August of 2018 at a Madden tournament that had affected many in the area, including AEW president Tony Khan, because he lived close by the area. This shooting also affected many within the esports and regular sports community because of it being at a Madden tournament. This shooting was a big part of Fight for the Fallen, and a big reason that Fight for the Fallen even happened, due to a relationship that they have with the Victim Assistance Advisory Council. The VAAC is a panel that comes together to decide on where donations for gun violence are going to fit, and that means that the proceeds of this show are going to be going to victims of gun violence as well as to preventative measures of gun violence. And many fans have asked Nick Sobek how they can help. He says just buy a ticket and enjoy the show, because all proceeds of this show are going to be donated to that charity. So that's a big part of Fight for the Fallen, and just a really interesting part that they push at the beginning of this episode. Following that, we get Brandy Rhodes, and she's training for her match with Allie. Mike Kulari is talking in the background and just hyping up her match and her build to this match. After that, we get a clip of MJF on Being the Elite. Adam Page is here to discuss this clip. He says, first of all, MJF, if you don't like horses, fuck you. He then mentions that he's 100%, he doesn't have a bum knee anymore, and he says that MJF tried to position this as a 1-versus-1 match for Adam Page's championship, but Adam Page isn't an idiot. So instead we got a match with Jimmy Havoc and Jungle Boy and Adam Page against MJF for no championship. So MJF is the one who screwed himself in this instance. After this, we get clips of the Cody and Dustin match and the post-match. We get Tony Schiavone and Jake Roberts to discuss this. Jake Roberts says that you have to trust your partner in tag team wrestling. That's why he was never in tag team wrestling, because he didn't trust anybody. Tony Schiavone goes on to say that after everything that the Rhodes brothers have been through in WWE and coming to AEW and having this match, that they have to trust each other. The trust has to be there. Jake and Schiavone then mention that the Young Bucks are filled with talent, talk about all of their accolades, but Tony Schiavone says if it's a grounded match, Cody and Dustin are going to win. But if it's a fast-paced match, the Young Bucks are going to win. Jake Roberts says that the crowd is going to be divided, and he ends the episode saying that it's a fresh and new match that the people want. And you can't argue with that. And AJ, what did you think of this episode of Road to Fight for the Fallen?
I liked it. I think one of the things that did make me a little confused was I really didn't think last episode was going to be the go-home show. I kind of got the vibe that there would be another, but, whatever. The last episode for Road to Fyter Fest was great. We're on Road to Fight for the Fallen. That makes sense. It's really cool getting more insight on to Tony Khan. I kind of wish, and I know he's a busy man, but I kind of wish that Tony Khan was the person telling us about this. I mean, I'm guessing we're going to see more of Nick Sobek. That's my impression. And that's fine. So maybe that's why. But aside from that, everything they're doing for the event is great, and I'm really happy that they're doing that. And I'm glad they're not just taking money and giving it to a charity, but giving it to an association that will put the funds to the right places for the right people. Because, I don't know, working on films and things that we're going to go, any proceeds we'll get, any donations, we'll give it to this. It's always like, what should we send that donation money to? Where should that go? And to have an actual council of people to decide this is where this needs to go, this is where that needs to go, I think that's great. And it's definitely encouraged me to buy merch while I'm there. The Adam Page stuff, it was cool. I'm glad that they're showing Adam Page. I'm glad that they're not shying away from that. I'm glad that Adam Page is, even if it's short, and it was short, and I think that's fine. Short and sweet is good. Just continuing on saying, hey, motherfucker, I'm 100% and I'm ready to beat your ass. Like, that's good. Again, a little confusing because this is Road to Fight for the Fallen, so I don't know. I'm being nitpicky. Then, the transition. Oh, wait, also, Brandy, she looked good in the videos. She looked like she was doing really well. Of course, those were clips, so, we don't know how good Brandy is or how good she isn't just from those few clips. But if we're judging by just those clips, you looked great, and it made me more excited and more interested in the alley match. So I'm hoping that's going to be good. I thought the Schiavone and Jake Roberts stuff was interesting. It was cool hearing Jake Roberts talk about it. It's cool hearing Jake Roberts talk about anything. Let's be honest. He's Jake Roberts. If he's talking, I'm interested. It's nice. I first I wasn't really sure how I felt about getting these old timer perspectives, these veteran perspectives, I should say, about the current matches that are going on. But I also really like Jake Roberts saying, like, Dustin is our guy. Like, for us veterans, we want Dustin to be a star. I never really put it in that frame that, like, there are people of older generations who are rooting for Dustin because, like, this could be his moment and his only moment, and it could almost be fulfilling for all of us who didn't get that moment. Schiavone, everything he said was interesting, spot on. I liked how he was going down the mat so that if the Young Bucks can make it fast-paced, then, they're done. That there's no way you can win a fast-paced match against the Bucks and the strengths that they have.
I think the biggest thing that they ran into here was the fact that following Fyter Fest, they would only have had 2 weeks to build the Fight for the Fallen. So you sort of had to build this episode as a combination of the two. As far as things that we were focusing on for Fyter Fest, Adam Page is the only part of Fyter Fest that we discussed on this show, and his match for Fyter Fest was the main point, and his promo was a good promo for it. I thought that the Dustin and Cody Rhodes build and everything like that was really well done as well. I thought the utilization of Jake Roberts and Tony Schiavone, two guys who aren't utilized a lot in wrestling to talk about things and talk about an upcoming match. I think that's something that AEW is doing really well and really smart, is utilizing these talents that people are familiar with and maybe older fans are familiar with, and utilizing their perspective to tell a story that's going on right now for people who may not know what's going on. They are using people that the fans trust, and that's great. And I also thought that they did a good job of just slowly building up Brandy's match and letting fans get accustomed to the idea that maybe she will have a pretty good match, and maybe it won't turn out as bad as people are thinking, and maybe it'll turn out really good in the long run. And we obviously still have to wait and see, because does she still have a surprise person to come and help her with this match? That was something they discussed earlier on. And then the Nick Sobek thing, I thought that was interesting. It was just a good little piece of information and everything. So I thought overall it was a really good episode of Road to Fight for the Fallen.
I agree.
And I'm glad that they at least approached some things about Fyter Fest, so that way we had something to build to for our last episode of anything going into Fyter Fest this weekend. And that finishes up Road 2. But speaking of Fyter Fest, let's run down on the Fyter Fest match card and give our predictions on the matches for the show. The first match on the pre-show that has been advertised is Kylie Rae versus Leva Bates. This isn't even a match that we've talked about much on the podcast, because I'm not totally sure how much it has been advertised.
I don't remember what's going on with this match. First I heard it was announced, then I heard it was announced by accident, and then I heard that it got taken off. So I'm hoping that when I go, I'm going to see this, because I like Kylie Rae. I am not very familiar with Blue Pants. I'm weirdly more familiar with Kylie Rae than I am with Leva Bates, but that said, I'm hoping Kylie Rae wins. I love her character, I love her personality, and I love how good of a wrestler she is. I think this is a great way to kick off the show, too. So I'm going to go with Kylie Rae.
Yeah, I'm going to go right there with you with Kylie Rae. I think maybe somehow Leva Bates loses, and then Peter Avalon is there to console her or something, in a way to build up that story. Another match for the pre-show that has just been booked in the last couple of weeks is the Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, versus SoCal Uncensored, Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian, versus Private Party, Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn. We haven't really seen much of Private Party, but who do you think's going to win this match, AJ?
I'm hoping it's the Best Friends. I think I've said that a bunch. I love the Best Friends. I love Chuck Taylor and Trent. That said, I would not be surprised if Private Party came out on top, just to kind of get them a little bit over. Because, even though not everybody is familiar with the Best Friends, I think a lot of people who will be watching this show are. But most people probably aren't familiar with Private Party, and this could be a really good way to showcase them. Or even if they don't win, just give them that rub. But I'm going to go with Best Friends just because how could I not?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you once again. I'm going to go with the best friends just because AEW is really pushing the idea of wins and losses mattering, and I think that the best friends will come out of this match running on a 2-win streak. And then I think that SoCal Uncensored will actually be the team to take the loss, and they'll be sitting at 1-1, and Private Party doesn't actually have to lose this match and can still continue to build. And I think the two losing teams will end up competing later on in the tag team tournament again. So I think that it's a good way for all three of these teams to just get a little bit more familiar with the crowd, and especially Private Party. They've done a little bit of work on the indie scene more as of late to get more well-known, but up until the last few months, they were basically unheard of for a lot of people. And then in the match that's been pushed the most on the pre-show, we have Michael Nakazawa versus Alex Bailey. Hardcore match and a comedy match, one would assume. What do you think?
I'm going to go with Jabali just because I don't think they're bringing in Michael Nakazawa to make Michael Nakazawa a star. I think he's there, to be more of a background guy and work with the overseas talent, and I think that's a good position for him. That said, we've been a little vocal that we're not big fans of this match, but nonetheless, I'm expecting it to be a fun match, and I think that's what's going to be important.
Right, so let's not spend too much time on this match. Alex Bailey.
Yeah.
Next match, we have Yuka Sakazaki versus Rio versus Nyla Rhodes. What are your thoughts on this match?
I'm excited for this match. First of all, I'm really into this. I'm glad we're getting more of a showcase for the Yuka Sakazaki is the quick answer.
That's our girl, dude. I'm not even saying for a winner, but I'm glad we're getting more Yuka.
Yeah, no, she's really cool. I think she's just an amazing wrestler. And that said, I'm glad we're going to get to showcase the Joshis a lot more and just get to see more of that. Nyla Rose is in there, and Nyla Rose could totally come out on top. I think one thing to note is I have no idea who's going to win like 99% of these, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's a fun part about AEW, especially just the beginning of any promotion. You have to see where they're going to set people up, but just as being presented as a big promotion, it's fun to see. And I think for my prediction on this match, I'm going to go with Rio, just because of her past connections with Kenny Omega and them discussing that more. I think that she might be someone from the Joshi division that they try and push as a main star. Then another match that they've talked about in the last couple weeks, we have Christopher Daniels versus CIMA in a singles match. What do you think?
I'm thinking it's got to be CIMA here because, like we were saying, wins and losses matter. This is the only one I have an idea of, okay, CIMA has to win this because if he doesn't, he's definitely not going to win against Kenny Omega. As far as I don't believe that they're going to put him over Kenny Omega at Fight for the Fallen. So I think it's more realistic that he's going to beat Daniels and then take a loss to Kenny Omega. So I'm going to go with CIMA.
Yeah, I think this will be a really great match to position CIMA and just show him to a bigger audience and what his potential is as a superstar in an American setting. But I think I'm right there with you. I think CIMA going into a match with Kenny Omega at Fight for the Fallen, I think that CIMA has to win.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and I can't be more excited that I get to see CIMA live and in person. I'm really stoked about that.
And another person you get to see live and in person, Adam Page, and he's a fucking horse.
He's a fucking horse.
Adam Page is fighting Jimmy Havoc, Jungle Boy, and MJF in a 4-way match. Who do you have winning this one?
Adam Page. It's got to be Adam Page, right? I want it to be Jungle Boy for very ridiculous reasons, but that's not going to happen. I don't want it to be Jungle Boy. It's Adam Page. I hope Adam Page wins. I could understand him losing this, but I don't think it's a good image unless he's going to have a follow-up match at Fight for the Fallen. Maybe MJF cheats or something, or maybe he doesn't even get pinned, so he doesn't look necessarily as bad as if he took the fall. Again, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess they're building up Adam Page and Jericho, so you want to have Adam Page going in strong.
Yeah, and I think that's just the biggest point. You want to give Adam Page a win and have him looking strong going into a big pay-per-view event. You want to have him continue to rack up wins. He won his chance at the championship in a multi-man match, and it was sort of just not what you wanted to see to build someone up. So I want to just see Adam Page sort of destroy MJF in this match and pick up a victory. I think you're right that there is a chance that he could lose without losing and not having to be pinned, but Adam Page needs to just rack up wins right now.
I agree.
And the next match on the card is the non-sanctioned match that we had spoke about earlier, Jon Moxley versus Joey Janela. Who do you have winning this?
Okay. I know it's not going to happen. I don't care. I got Joey Janela. I want Joey Janela to win. I want John Moxley to put him over. I don't care. I want Joey Janela to win. I'm picking Joey Janela. I love Joey Janela. Joey Janela or Riot. Putting my foot
It's hard
down.
to argue with that, man. Being a Janela mark for all these years and everything, logic is all against it, but I'm just going to ride with you, man. I'm with you on if Janela wins next week, we can, or even right after the show, we can sit there and
Yep.
hype ourselves up on how we rode with our dude, and he ended up
I'll
going
be
over
screaming
Moxley.
in the hotel, bro.
Moxley's a guy who's willing to make people stars. I think, like I said, no matter what, Janela comes out a star in this match, so he wins either way in my book.
Yeah.
But I'm going with Janela. Fuck it.
Yep.
Then a match that's been talked about highly throughout all of the build to Fyter Fest. It was one of the first matches. The Elite Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson versus the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon, and Rey Fenix. It was originally supposed to be Pac. Then it was a surprise partner, and then we got Laredo Kid. Who do you think's winning this?
You know, I'm gonna go with the Elite. Not just because, you know, the Elite book themselves didn't go over, but Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson, you know, him studying the match about what did we do wrong, what did we do wrong. I feel like we're gonna go back and forth a lot, which I know, you know, may not be the kind of booking everybody likes. You know, this team wins, then this team wins, then this team wins, then this team wins. But I don't know. I feel like that's where this is headed. My gut's telling me the Elite. I'll go with the Elite. I really don't know, though.
Yeah, it's a tough call, man. I think that just because I don't think that the Elite will always put themselves... I don't think there will be a card where they put themselves over everyone, and
Yeah.
I don't think that Cody's going to lose his match. So in this case, I think that the Elite will lose, but it's tough to see who takes that fall. I mean, the Lucha Brothers could get their win back in AEW through this match, so maybe I do see something like that where, yeah, they got their championships back, but that was at a AAA event, but maybe they still have to get their win back on AEW TV, so maybe Pentagon gets a pin on Jackson, or maybe even he gets a pin on Omega. Who knows? I mean, they had the Pentagon and Omega match in the past, so.
Yeah.
And the last match on the card that we haven't discussed yet, Cody Rhodes versus Darby Allin. What do you think?
I'm going to go Cody. I'm expecting that this is going to be a really great match and that Cody's going to do a lot to put Darby Allin over. I think it's possible that Darby could win, but I think it makes more sense. I don't know. I have no idea. I keep saying it might make more sense. I don't have a clue.
I think I'm going to change my pick on the last match and go with the Elite and say that Darby Allin's winning this one because, like I said, I don't think they're all going to win on one show, but I think that Darby's going to pick up a win here. I think that they've pushed Darby and tried to push him as a legitimate character and someone that needs to be accepted by AEW, that I don't think you can have him lose and just shake Cody's hand and have that be where Darby really gets pushed. I think that Darby has to come out of this with a victory, and I think there are a couple ways you could do it, and it doesn't hurt Cody so much to come out of this with a loss, especially if he ends up distracted or just maybe Dustin's around and
Maybe
Dustin's trying to help him out.
Or just,
and
I
it
don't
screws him.
expect that, but
I don't either, but it's not a pay-per-view event, so who knows? I mean, they talked about how they wanted clean finishes and everything on pay-per-views. This is really a free show, so who knows what we'll see, but I do think that somehow Darby's going to come out with a victory, so... And that finishes up our Fyter Fest preview show. We got through our Fyter Fest predictions. We got through the last episode of Being the Elite and the last episode of Road to. The one thing I do want to mention before we close out the show is that we are starting a new AEW fantasy game on our website, alleliteeverything.com. It's very easy, quick and easy way to sign up, and we're going to be giving away merch at the end of All Out, so it's a good way to win some free merch and have a fun little thing going on. So if you want to get involved, join in. The last day to join in is going to be during Fyter Fest, so you're going to want to get in as soon as you can. Other than that, AJ, you got anything you want to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at AJ the Fitzy. You can follow me at Big Match AJ. I'm going to be tweeting from that account. I'll be tweeting not just that account. I'll be tweeting on the All Elite Podcast Twitter account. So make sure you're following that for live stuff from Fyter Fest. Anything that is crazy that's happening or a clip I record, it's going to be there. It's also going to be on Big Match AJ on Twitter, and it's also going to be on Instagram at AJ the Fitzy. I'm going to be doing a lot, as much as I can, to record and capture stuff, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, keep an eye out on AJ's social media. Obviously going to Fyter Fest, so you get a little first-hand experience if you keep an eye on that. And we're just excited for Fyter Fest. I'm stupid excited. I can't wait. Just the second AEW show as we continue to build up to All Out. a show that I'm actually going to be able to go to. So it's all just really exciting. You can follow the All Elite Podcast at All Elite Podcast on Twitter. Otherwise, just stay tuned for upcoming events and contests that we're doing. And thanks for joining us this week.
Bye.
See ya.
You got two things wrong. First of all, if you don't like horses, well, you. And second of all, my bum knee is at 100%. I'm as healthy as I've ever been. Max, I understand what you tried to do. You tried to use the one tool that you do have, your little mouth, and talk your way into a match where for some reason I was supposed to put my title shot on the line against you.